You have to have a harmonious balance of that human, empathetic, one-to-one, sincere side, all the human side that brings great value to the customer. You have to have that in spades, and you have to harmoniously balance that with scientific, repeatable, process-oriented, baked in scalability, right? You have to balance those two things harmoniously.
Hey y'all, welcome to Selling with Social, the podcast that helps marketers increase marketing qualified leads, sales reps to shatter sales results, and sales leaders to grow as leaders. Each show, we interview sales, marketing, and social media practitioners, leaders, and influencers to help you connect, close more deals, build stronger relationships with clients, and improve your sales productivity. I'm Mario Martinez Jr. You're now listening to Selling with Social. There's no recovery from a bad first impression, both in dating and sales. Your sales reps need to sell better and smarter from the onset to ensure a good customer experience. That is why you should visit calliduscloud.com/Vengreso to view the webinar recording that will change your perspective on the selling experience and how you can improve. That's calliduscloud.com/Vengreso. Mr. Kyle Porter. Man, I am so pumped that you're here with me on Selling with Social. Welcome to the podcast, my friend.
I am happy to be here. This is going to be really fun. We're going to have some exciting conversations, and I'm looking forward to it.
Now, for all of you listening in right now, Kyle, we've got sales, we've got marketers, we've got sales leaders, business owners. For everybody listening in, I was on stage. We were at Flip My Funnel back in August, and I had the privilege of introducing Kyle to the whole entire sales crowd that was there. And he had no idea what I was going to say, but I'm going to put it on record here. And I started my introduction with, now this next person I'm super excited to introduce because he doesn't know this. And it's kind of a little funny, crazy, odd thing to say, but I got a kind of a man crush on someone. And my man crush is on my boy Kyle Porter here. You just had such an amazing track and success record and story. Bro, I'm excited for you to be here because it's going to be some great conversation we're going to have around entrepreneurship, scaling up an organization, about leadership, and then also what I call the lost art of selling with email, right? And so I'm excited to have you here. So just do us a favor. For those people that don't know who Kyle Porter is, obviously the CEO of Salesloft, but tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and who you are, man.
Awesome. Well, again, so excited to be here. Thanks for the kind words. I am the founder and CEO of Salesloft. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, went to school at Georgia Tech, started the company here. I'm excited that we're now a global business with offices in San Francisco, New York, and soon in EMEA. I started this company back in late 2011 and been on a wild journey ever since, but I'm a father. I've got a son named Clark. He's 17 months old. I've got a daughter, Brooklyn, who's about 4.5. And then my wife, April, and I live here in the city. So that's who I am, and excited to share more and chat with your audience.
Everybody knows who they listen in. As they listen into my podcast, I always start out with a question, and that is, tell us something nobody would know about you by looking at your social profiles. And I'm looking for something juicy, man. Just don't admit to anything crazy that's going to get you caught up in legal.
Well, I'm going to give you two because I think you might already know this, but it's not on my social profiles. In addition to being the CEO of Salesloft, which is a 320-person fast-growing SaaS company, venture-backed SaaS technology company, I'm also a tangerine farmer. So my wife and I own tangerine farms. We have a tangerine farm down in Central Florida where we spend a lot of our time. On the weekends, I'm in the four-wheeler with my daughter, Brooklyn. She's hopping in the back with her bucket. We're picking the best tangerines, bringing them home, fresh squeezed juice, fresh fruit for days, and I just love it. I love being out in the land. I built a beach in my backyard on the lake with 6 tons of sand and heavy equipment. So I love to just be out in the land. I love to build stuff. I love to work in the yard. And that's a big part of my life.
Was that the one thing?
That was one. Okay, yeah, that was one. The other one is even more of a story that I don't share much, but I was actually born with a rare blood disease and wasn't expected to live past infancy. At 9 months old, my parents rushed me to the hospital with a 104-degree fever, and the doctors diagnosed me, and they never expected me to live. So I battled this immune system issue for the first 10 years of my life, on which I came to a miraculous cure. And it absolutely changed my life. My whole entire childhood was spent fighting against this illness. And so I think it bore in me a little bit of a grit, a little bit of a relentlessness, and even a little bit of ability to create an alternate reality. So I like to credit some of the times that I've had in my life and really think back to those early memories. So not many people know about that.
I did not know about that. Did you say the name of the rare blood disease?
It was called a gamma globulin immunodeficiency disorder, if you want to get specific.
A gamma globulin immunodeficiency disorder.
There you go.
All right.
Close.
I'll just leave it at that. I'm not going to try to do that. So you still live with this today then?
No, I was cured of it when I was 10 years old. So my body started to produce blood cells to fight off disease and infection, and I've never had an issue since.
Was it randomly that your body just started producing this?
So I had to get an IV every week. And it was ScamaGuard fluid, and it was basically other people's immunities going into my system. And what the doctors think is that based on getting all these different immunities into my body, it started to trigger my body to recognize how to produce them for myself. And so I haven't had an issue since I was 10.
Wow, that's amazing. And was that an expected outcome of the treatment or not a not expected outcome?
No, it was expected that I would just have to take the treatment forever.
Holy Toledo. Wow, that's amazing. Well, first off, I'm glad that that's fixed. I did not know that. And then going back to the tangerine farmer thing, whereabouts are Tampa, Orlando? Where's your stuff?
It's Central Florida, between Tampa and Orlando, south of I-4, a little town called Winter Haven.
Winter Haven. Can I make a deal with you?
Yes.
The deal is our CMO, Bernie Borges, is out in Tampa. Okay. So next time I come out, I don't know, we'll plan it. If you don't mind, I'd love to bring my family out and teach us how to pick tangerines.
We can do that. The first time I ever met my wife, April's father, she's fourth generation tangerine business. So he's a farmer and he's the COO and co-owner of the company. And I met him and he said, get in the truck. And I went to grab the handle and he goes, no, the back of the truck, we're going picking. So that was my first interaction with my father-in-law. And then when I asked for his daughter's hand in marriage, the only time I could find him, he was out chopping wood with an axe. So I had to approach the axe man to ask if I could marry his daughter.
Was he holding the axe when you asked him?
He was chopping. Yeah, he was holding it. So.
Oh, man. Obviously, it went well because you guys are, he's a co-founder of the company or owner of the company with you at Salesloft.
No, not of Salesloft, of the tangerine business. But he and I have a great relationship. So, yes.
I love it. Fantastic. Well, man, those are great stories. So you definitely open up. I think I'm going to use no one's ever talked about a rare blood disease before. So that's a new one for us, man. Well, fantastic. So listen, I want to get into talking about some of the things that I talked about earlier today. I said my man crush, right? You have done something which has been pretty amazing, and you've taken your company, Salesloft, which is now 320 folks. And I think you just got Series D. Is that right?
C. That was in April, yes.
Yeah,
we
and
raised
that was
a $50 million round from Insight Venture Partners and LinkedIn and Emergence Capital.
Amazing fundraising round there. You've done a great thing of taking a small company, a vision, and you've made it now a reality and a powerhouse in this world of modern selling. We talked about modern selling with modern technologies. So congratulations and hats off to you. Talk a little bit about, rewind back to the beginning days of Salesloft. Describe what your dream was or your vision, and then talk about how that became a reality.
Well, I'll tell you, it goes back to childhood. Because I had that disease, my parents didn't want me playing baseball and football, and it was dangerous for me to do so. And I fell in love with commerce at an early age. So I was selling Beanie Babies, baseball cards, G.I. Joes, comic books, all sorts of kids' collectibles up until my teenage years. And I just fell in love with sales. And what I loved the most was the look in someone's eyes when you provided them with something that they wanted, that they needed, that they couldn't get on their own. And so I've just been in love with the profession of sales ever since I was a kid. And what that allowed me to do is visualize and see people that were doing it right, people that were doing it wrong, but most importantly, how the buyer reacted to all of it. And so when I decided to start Salesloft, the only thing I knew is that I wanted to start a company that would be focused on the buyer's needs and provide them with a sincere, authentic, one-to-one and human sales relationship, but use technology to make that easier and easier to do so that you could scale your sales while still delivering awesome experiences. So that was the very beginning. And what I also wanted to do is I wanted to create a vehicle A company, I found out from other great entrepreneurs that I had spent a lot of time with, a company is a vehicle for change. And it's one of the greatest vehicles in the world for change in people's lives. And so I knew all these folks from the technology community from my previous roles. And I would sit in a room with peers and I would see that they had so many talents, so many skills, capabilities, dreams, and ambitions. And I knew if I started a company, it could be a place where others could come to learn, to do more, to become more, to take their talents and skills and use them to serve others. And that was the purpose of this business. So create an environment where people can find fulfillment and then deliver insane amounts of value to sellers, but do it through the experience that they're having with the buyer.
Which is the name of the game, right? I mean, and you guys talk a lot about this, about the modern selling approach. You also talk about this from a technology standpoint. And I think it's on your LinkedIn profile. There's no argument at this, well, I think there's a lot of argument that people will still have, but that how the buying process has changed the game for sellers and the way we engage with buyers. I'll tell you a little story anecdotally here. We've been going through a review of an application that Vengreso has been going to buy and purchase for the corporation. And we identified 27 different providers. We did all of our research online and we narrowed it down to 10 that we wanted to talk to. And those 10, we decided what we're going to do is I'm going to hit the easy button. I'm a buyer who understands exactly what I'm looking for. I've done about 70% of what I can do. I needed to get down into the nitty gritty now, right? So I open up, our team sends out messages to all 10 providers and says, here's the 21 things that we're looking for. Here is the timeline of which we're looking to purchase. We do have a budget. And here's the process that we need to have. 1, meeting with you, your salesperson, and your sales engineer. Do not hold a meeting without your sales engineer because we're ready to get involved in the nitty-gritty. And number 2, please go ahead and arrange or tell me times that your CEO is available so that he could have a meeting with Mario, which is some of the messaging that went out. And Kyle, the crazy part about this was 1 out of those 10 companies, 1, unfortunately, we didn't go with them because they didn't meet the needs. Only 1 followed the process. Everybody else wanted to take me through, no, you got to start a call out with an SDR. Then the SDR has to hand it off to an AE. Then the AE will then arrange another call with a sales engineer. And then after that, if you meet the right pricing and you've got the right budget to be able to buy our product, then you can have a meeting with the CXO. And the crazy part was I got into it with a sales guy and I'm like, look, dude, I'm telling you what I've done. I already know what we need to do. You've showed me the app. It meets our needs. Here's my next process. I'm not going to talk about pricing until I meet the CEO so that we understand we're on the same page and where I want to go. They refused to, including the executive, the VP of sales. So all I did is use tools and technology to find the CEO's phone number, found it, called him on the cell phone and said, can we have a meeting? The executive came back to me like, well, what did you do that for? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I told you in advance what my buyer's journey was, and you're trying to map me to a sales journey now, not to the buyer's journey. And that's one of the most frustrating things out in the marketplace is how salespeople are not adapting to the way the buyers want to buy, which can be different from buyer to buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree in some ways, but I also have an area I can challenge you on that with,
sure,
if you're okay with it.
Absolutely.
So if you would have done that to me, I would have told you, Mario, you may think you're 70% through the buying process, but I've seen 2,000 of these implementations and I've gone through interactions with the executives throughout that process. And I bet you I know a thing or two that you haven't explored or haven't looked into. And I'm going to help shed some light and provide some insights on the things you don't know. And I think that's really important. Now, for you, it might be different. It depends on the solution you're buying and the size of your buying organization. But for enterprise companies, it's very difficult for them to know how to buy. And so sellers need to help teach them that as well. I totally agree that the prevailing theme here is understand and help your buyers go through a buyer's journey that meets the needs of their organization and best provides them with value. But on the sales side, you also have to know that I know more than you do about sales engagement. I live, eat, breathe, and sleep it. And I don't sleep that many hours, right? And so I've seen so much. Now, I need to know the nuances of your organization, but then I'm going to tell you things you've never thought of. And I noticed this myself as we started buying things. As we got bigger, I realized that percentage of knowledge I have about the solution I want to buy has actually been going down. I'll give you an example. We bought 3 floors and a midtown high-rise business building in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, or midtown Atlanta, Georgia. And I started looking at furniture options. And I swear to you that the complexity of the furniture market it was at an all-time high the day that I was exploring buying furniture. And what I really needed is I needed a seller to rise above all the noise of all the spam that I'd been getting. And I've been getting lots of mail about furniture. I've been getting lots of email and phone calls, but I needed a seller to rise above all of that and deliver me with an experience where they provided insights, helped understand my business, and gave me a clear path to buying what I needed. And it was difficult to find that. So there's a little bit of balance on both sides. You got to know that buyer's journey, but great sellers know more than their customers do about one thing, the solution that they sell. And if they can do the right discovery and help understand the business the right way, if they're great at what they do, they can serve you greater than anyone else.
Oh man, I'll take your challenge, and I absolutely agree with you actually. But the caveat is the seller has got to be a great seller that understands the need that they're solving and the nuances of how to solve that need. And there's just like
what's unique about each customer, because
exactly.
there are things that are similar and there are lots of things that are unique about each customer.
100%. And that's the same thing with us when we're engaged with training sales teams on how to leverage digital or video, right? Social or video. One size does not necessarily fit all. The formula that we've got fits, but you may actually, for example, when we work with customers, we're not going to work with you unless you've got the content already built that helps attract or bring value to the conversation to a salesperson. There's no point in training a sales organization how to fish if you don't have the bait. So the point is that the formula says you've got to have this, but we need to go through that process and say, do you have this? Have you thought about this? Do you have that? And those are some of the challenges, I think, with definitely the sales reps that I engaged with in this last process that was very frustrating was they didn't understand all the different nuances of the how and the what and the why, right? And so I agree with you to the point of a great seller has got to understand the different nuances for sure.
Well, and Gartner reports that 53% of customer loyalty, and customer loyalty is what we all want, especially in this modern era of subscription revenue where you sell a customer once, but you've got to sell them every year, or every quarter for some businesses, right? Or even every month, but you've got to sell them every single year. And so that customer loyalty is incredibly important. And Gartner says that 53% of customer loyalty is derived in the sales experience. Your frontline people, how are they showing up for your buyer? What does that interaction look like, feel like? What is the buyer's reaction to those engagements with your seller? And that's where I focus my attention, is helping make that better and better and better and doing it with software.
Yeah, I hear you 100% on that. And actually, to that point, LinkedIn State of Sales 2018 report identified, I think it was about 600 respondents, B2B buyers, and they identify like what percentage does trust with your salesperson play in your decision? And 51% said trust was the number one factor of them deciding what to buy and who to buy it from.
Absolutely.
It goes back to your point where you're challenging me, and I accept that challenge, which is, hey, the seller, though, needs to understand their solution to the business problem that they're trying to solve, and that will drive trust.
Yeah.
Right?
I talk a lot with the sales team about building and establishing trust, because when you first come into an interaction, the only trust that exists is the things that they've already researched you on. So they may trust your brand to an extent. They may trust, some customer reviews that they've seen. They may trust the things they've seen on your profile. But once you start that relationship, the way to establish deeper and deeper trust is for me to make a commitment to you and follow through and do it over and over and over again. And so that's what I always am sharing with my team. You want to serve them best. You've got to build that trust, make some commitments and make them happen. And they can be small commitments in the moment. I can tell you, hey, I'm going to tell you 3 insights that you might not have known, and then I'm going to do it. And you're like, wow, those are 3 insights that I might not have known, right? There we go. We're starting to build that trust. And so this is one of the things that we focus a lot of attention on.
Yeah. As you scale Salesloft, I'm sure you faced many different challenges as you've grown the company. I would imagine that this would be one of them, right? Like hiring new salespeople that adopt the philosophy of what you've just described, which I would describe as the nirvana state, right? Whether it's that or other challenges, what are some of the challenges that you face as you've grown Salesloft from where you were at to where you're at today?
Yeah, lots of them. The first I would classify as immaturity and inexperience in me as a leader. So that's the first and biggest challenge that I've overcome, or I'm trying to always overcome, I would say. And the second one was not deep enough focus on organizational health and culture in the organization. So for the first year of the business, we started to build a product. We had a brand, we had a blog that was being read and picked up. We had a free product called jobchangealerts.com. This is way back in the day. And it was going pretty nicely. but I had trouble being a great leader, particularly around product management and product leadership. And so I built a team that didn't share with my organizational values, and that didn't work out. And so I had to reboot the entire business a year after starting the company. And we built an entire new product after I brought on a co-founder who was an incredible technologist, full stack engineer, a level 5 leader, just operationally excellence, big long-term view on how to treat people and how to lead the company. And then together we built a new product, and then we ended up having to cancel that one as well. So that one went from 0 to 7 million in ARR in less than 18 months. So it was a fast growing business, but I learned a few lessons there too. I learned that I wanted to be an engagement platform so that my users would log in every day and use it and be engaged in the product that I was building so that I could help influence the way that they did their job and make their lives easier and help them deliver a better experience to their customers. And so we ended up building what is now Salesloft, and that product was launched in early 2015 and has just been growing astronomically since then.
Interesting. So you've actually had, I think I counted 3 product shifts, if I'm not mistaken. You described
there were actually some even smaller ones in there too. But 3 big ones. Yeah, 3 big ones. And, and we're fortunately settled on one that's making a giant difference for sellers and organizations around the world. So we're good now. We'll just innovate and evolve from here.
Absolutely. Well, no, and you guys are the 800-pound gorilla in this particular space in terms of what most people know you for is leveraging email, right, as a way to be able to communicate. But I think you guys have got a number of different tools and technologies that you guys have brought on board, from intelligence to some of the other products that you guys have as well. But I want to go back to something you said, which was some of the challenges. And you said inexperience as a leader. Talk a little bit about that, what you mean by that.
I believe that this business and Salesloft, the results of this company, is a direct reflection of how good I am as a CEO. And my job is to get better and better every single day. And I feel like I'm doing a relatively good job of that. But what that means is that I certainly wasn't as good in 2012 as I was in 2015 or in 2018. Sure. Now, I think what happens is that I've got to always continually evolve myself. Early on, I was always relentless. I was always driven. I always knew sales. I know it better today than I've ever known it, but I didn't know the nuances of product management and focus and how to lead people the best and how to, match hiring characteristics with my values and overall expectations for the business as we grew. And so there's just been so many learning curves, in my leadership that I don't think people talk about that a lot, right? I think I've probably even been scared over the last 5 years, to be honest, about, the maturity and the growth of myself as a leader. But I'm not like that anymore. And I think our team, we all recognize transparently and vulnerably that there's lots of area for development. And if we can improve in those areas, then we can move mountains. And so we're always focused on improving.
I love it. Sales managers, sales directors, vice presidents, sales rep, anybody who's wanting to move into the leadership route, I think suffers from exactly what you've just described, whether it's because of youth or whether it's because of inexperience or a combination of both. Transforming into a leader takes time. And every day, no matter what the age is, you're learning and growing and developing and you make mistakes. What I want to talk to you about, though, is what did you do to actually develop yourself better and better each day? Or what are you doing? And before you answer that question, we're going to take a short break and listen to this message from our program sponsor. Do you feel like your sales team spends more time updating and completing administrative tasks than they do engaging with customers? CRM was supposed to automate the sales process, but instead created more manual processes. SAP Sales Cloud introduces modern CRM to the industry so that you can sell more and enable your team to be more efficient, effective, and intelligent. SAP Sales Cloud offers solutions to optimize your sales process, accelerate quotes and contracts, and enable corporate learning. No matter what industry you're in, you can build processes around what your salespeople do best. With SAP Sales Cloud, sales as you know it is about to change. Learn more by visiting calliduscloud.com/Vengreso today. That's CALLIDUS cloud.com/VENGRESO SO. So Kyle, right before that break, I asked you, what are you doing or what did you do to become a better leader and to create a better culture, a better healthy culture of the organization? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll talk about individually and then for the team. So the first piece is fail. The number of failures that I've been through have been tremendous and they go way back, right? So fail and then recognize it, admit it, do not shy away from it, do not put my head in the sand, and share it with the people around me. So whether that's my co-founder, my executive leadership team, my wife, my father, my CEO coach, my board, my mentors, my investors, I am all about just getting it out there in the open light so that then it can be tackled, right? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is course of action to improve there. Who can help me the most? Which resources can help me the most? Whether it's a book, whether it's a mentor, whether it is some sort of training, right? So identify that area that will help and then just invest in it and measure it and improve until it's ready, right? And so I think that's the big thing. So I now have a CEO coach. He comes in and there's probably not a single thing in my life that I wouldn't tell him. I'm just upfront, right? And then I've got an incredible relationship with my co-founder. Same thing, complete transparency. This guy knows me inside and out. Same thing with my wife, same thing with my dad, same thing with our board. I'm all about just, nothing hidden. And so those are some of the things that have really helped me. And then I've read just a ton of books. So I love reading. It's one of my favorite things in the world to do. I read every single book on Kindle. I highlight in the Kindle, and then I transfer the highlights in my notes into my Evernote, where I can pull up on my phone today every single book that I've read in the last 5 years with every single note and highlight that I've ever taken in it. And I'll review it over time. I'll read it. I'll go back to it when I need it. I'll share it. Pretty much almost every book I've read, I've shared with at least a dozen people in my network to teach. And, they say you learn when you teach, right? And so this is just part of the continual learning mechanism that I've invested in to make sure that I'm always keeping my skills sharp. On the people side, we set up a leadership development program with a syllabus that's been fine-tooth combed over so that our people can go through these training programs and improve. And then we also, anytime I'm reading any of this stuff, I'm delivering it to the team. And then there's a lot of stuff on our executive leadership team, which we can get to later. I'll share with you.
That's pretty awesome. If you were to look back, is there any one single book that you thought, oh man, this made one of the greatest impacts to you as a leader to become a better leader?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you two. The first is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence Others. This is a biannual read for me. And every time I read it, I say, oh my gosh, I knew that was true, but I didn't practice it today or yesterday or the day before. And I'm continuously trying to program myself to remember what I want to do and how I want to treat others and how I care about them. And so this is the big one for me. The second one is really the best blueprint for the company. It's called The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. And this book is all about organizational health. I believe that as a CEO, as a founder, as a competitor in a marketplace, that the most giant differentiating advantage that we can have and that we do have is our organizational health. Markets change, technologies change, macroeconomic climates, all these things can change, but how we hire people, what our vision of the future is, what our purpose and values are, what is the process for praises, reprimand, promotions, all these things, that is the thing that a CEO has the most control over, and that sets the climate for the whole organization.
So I'm going to go through the steps. I don't know if you were counting what your steps were that you identified. I'm going to go through your steps of how to become a better leader. And obviously we have many, many, many sales leaders or people that are aspired to be into sales leadership. And I think the formula that you gave is absolutely something that someone can start investing in if you aspire to even be in leadership. So here's what I heard you say. Fail, recognize it, admit it, have a coach, understand the course of action to correct it, and invest in it. Yeah. And then the sixth thing that you mentioned was become a student of learning. Well, you didn't say that, but I translated it into a student of learning.
And to have a coach doesn't mean that person has to have the title coach. Basically, what that means is that you're sharing your mistake and your failure with others who have insights that can be helpful to you.
That will make you better, right?
Yeah, that's right.
or tell you the things. This is funny. I remember my early days. I aspired to be in management, and I had Lynn Pinchek. She was actually vice president of sales over at Sprint now. And she was on my podcast sometime, maybe the last year, on a Selling with Social podcast. And she described me, she said, you wanted to be in management so bad, and you had everything that you touched turned to gold, right? From a sales perspective. But you were just a bull in the china shop. You were bull in the china shop, right? But it took someone like her to be able to not just talk about it, but it took someone like her to be able to just hit me square in the head, right on the forehead, right between the eyes, right? To be able to tell me, you are wrong. You must not do it this way. You must stop. And here's why you're wrong. People don't, whatever the item was. And so I think that coach that you look for is not the person that's going to make it easy for you to swallow it. That coach should be somebody that's going to tell you the tough things that you need to hear. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And you with your bull in the china shop comment, which I have been accused of being myself a time or two, the biggest learning there is you have to do both. You have to be nurturing and you have to challenge your people. You have to be loving and you have to reprimand them from time to time. You have to give them praise. You have to coach them up. You have to be symphony and you have to be Metallica.
I love that. That's a great illustration. That one's going to go into a subheading here. You got to be symphony and you have to be Metallica to be a great leader.
And you have to balance those things always. And you have to stay in like the chi, you have to have a harmonious balance of those things. And in sales, you have to have a harmonious balance of that human, empathetic, one-to-one, sincere side, all the human side that brings great value to the customer. You have to have that in spades. And you have to harmoniously balance that with scientific, repeatable, process-oriented, baked in scalability, right? You have to balance those two things harmoniously. And that's really, the most important thing I've learned in sales.
And to be honest with you, it's a very tough role, right? I mean, because your job is not easy as a CEO of Salesloft, as a CEO of Vengreso, but even if you're a sales rep, as the CEO of your individual business, you work the way a real CEO like yourself would work, which is you've got customer success, you've got implementation, you've got finance, you've got billing, you've got to make sure contracts are done, you've got to make sure the customer's happy, all these different elements. And sometimes someone does something that's just so dumb. And you're just like, you just want to scream out at them. But to your point, as you mentioned, there's that time to be symphony, and then there's that time to be Metallica. That's a really hard balance to learn. And I believe that comes A, with personality, and B, over the course of time. But something that you said earlier, which I want to reemphasize, and that is what I coined as a student of learning. Like, you adapt, you take the course of action, and you invest in it until you become better at it.
Yeah, always be learning, lifelong learner.
Excellent insights for those that are either in a leadership position or aspiring to be a leader. And certainly, I love your transparency and your authenticity about how you've grown and adapted into this particular role.
I won't be able to build this business to what we want it to be if I don't continue to do so.
Absolutely. And that goes back to one of the questions that I probably wanted as I was listening to you speak. If you were to rewind backwards to the beginning as a leader, what advice would you now tell yourself?
That's a tough one because the journey has been such a reward, and the journey has been what's led to the growth and fulfillment. So I'm happy that I went through every moment of every step that I did. But, there's a really tough tension when you're starting a company. You have to keep the lights on. You have to get that first product market fit. You have to get that first dollar of revenue. But yet I also, while I was doing all those things, wanted to build a sustainable, long-term, independent company. So I was balancing between those two things. You put both of your hands in front of your eyes, put one close and one far away. The CEO's job is to focus on the first hand, then focus on the backhand, then focus on the first hand, then focus on the backhand. And if I could walk myself through, go back to a junior Kyle Porter and say, hey, and just coach on those things. Here's the perspective. Here's how this is going to unfold. And also if I could say, hey, by the way, you're going to start this sales engagement movement. It's going to take off. And it's going to be this giant market opportunity. If I would have told myself that, then I would have known a few more things about what I was going to be faced with over time. But, you never know in the early stages. I think luck is super important. But then I also have a poster of Arnold Palmer chipping out of the sand, and it says, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Very, very true. That's a great point. It's interesting too, as I think back as well on the journey, when I was sat in corporate, when I left a little over, actually almost 3 years ago, January, in 45 days, it'll be 3 years ago when I left my VP of sales spot. And as I think back into my days in corporate, generally I was used to go and take an underperforming team or organization and bring them back to the top. And the first thing that you had to assess was the who. Who do you have on the team? Is that who the right person to be able to help get you to where you need to go? And as I think back on Vengreso as well as our journey, the who was super important. And this actually came not from my thinking. This actually came from our CMO, Bernie Borges, who is much wiser than myself, but based upon his experience. And I love working with him. I'm super glad that he's one of our co-founders. But that was one of the things he always talked about was in our early days was, do we have the right players? Think about that. Who is on the team, and is that the person that's going to help us get to where we need to get to as the next spot? So that's probably some of the things that I would think about is, do you have the right person? And then sometimes you think, I think they're the right person. The next question, in my opinion, tell me if you agree with this, is can we coach them to where we want them to be? Because it's a lot easier to coach someone up if they have the right attributes than it is to have to replace and rebuild depending on the personnel that you've got. What do you think about that?
As long as one of the most important characteristics of do you have the right person is, are they interested and aware of the areas for growth? Are they coachable? Are they self-aware? Are they learners, right? Those things are just critical. You hit the nail on the head. When I hire people, especially on the executive team, which I've done a good bit of to build our staff up, I'm going to be transparent with them about my strengths and where my best and highest use of my time goes and should go. And I'm going to be transparent with them about my areas for development and what my 360 review says. And if they can't share the self-awareness of where their development areas are in those interviews, then I can't come to work with you. It's more important that you know where some of your tough spots are than even what you do with them. Like, just knowing them is the most important part, because then I can come to you and we can have an honest conversation, right? If I see you do something that's outside of the expectations of how we do things at Salesloft and you can't grasp that, then that makes for a very difficult relationship. So I think awareness is just so critical, but you're totally right, because now we're going to create development opportunities. And it's my job to be developmental to my staff. But for my executive leadership team, most of the time, quite frankly, they're experts in their domain and they're teaching me something about it.
Yeah, as it should be, right? And that's one of the things that we talk about is as you scale up your team, you either learn to let go and trust, or you keep control and oftentimes restrict the business from growing. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. And that's been the story of my last year and a half or 2 years, is certainly less hands-on, but eyes on, hands off. And delegating and empowering our team to be the best they can be. And they're already incredible, and they have better domain expertise, and they've got so much talent and potential. And so it's been kind of pulling myself out of the arena a little bit, but making less decisions, focused on my best and highest use of my time that make a bigger impact over a longer term.
Yeah. So it's funny, one of the leaders on our team, apparently I say this a lot when they come to me and then they're brainstorming and we're asking ideas of the who's, the what's, the how's, right? I say this phrase, if it were me and I were you, I'm not telling you what to do, but if it were me and I were you. And so it's funny because I say that so much that now it's a funny thing when they come to me, they say, so let me help you, Mario. If it were me and I were you, that's what you would say, by the way. Yep. One of those areas for me in terms of developing is if I don't have a perspective and you can go one direction or another, or if I'm giving you a perspective to something to think about, remove out the if or me and I were you, but add in, here's something to think about. Right? If you go this direction, this is one thing that can happen. If you go this direction, this is another thing that can happen, right? That's what I've been trying to do, is pull out of that, if it were me and I were you, because essentially what that translates into is, oh, this is the direction that he wants to go.
Yeah, you gotta be really careful. If you make the decision for them, then there's no risk in it.
Exactly right.
They don't have the accountability to it. If the decision is between go red or go blue, and you say go red and they go red and it fails, then that's not their fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
We call it upward delegation, and you got to avoid it completely as a leader.
Absolutely.
Getting upwardly delegated.
I love it. This is one of the things I really encourage folks to learn. And that is your team has got to be able to call you out when you make a mistake. And I'll give you a great example. Our social media manager, I gave some direction of here's what I think we need to do. Here's how I would run the campaign based upon obviously my experience. And I used a phrase that I, in my head, translated into one thing, but in true technical terms on social is actually the opposite. And so when I saw this go out, I wrote back, what the heck? Like, what happened? He responded back, Travis is his name. Travis goes, I did exactly as you told me to do. And I was like, no, you didn't. I said, dude. So then he took a snapshot of my email and sent it to me. And he said, this is what you told me to do. And I read it and I wrote, my total bad, bro. I'm sorry. Right. But in other cases, some individuals might not feel that freedom and they'll be like, oh, my mistake, I'll correct it right now. That's another approach that could have happened. And I really think, to your point, I mean, I would love your commentary on this, fostering a healthy culture within an organization, especially as you scale and grow it. Is it safe to assume that you should encourage people to call you out in a professional, loving way?
Yeah, man. I got no problem with that. I think that's organizational health's, one of the core tenets of it. An organization, the people inside of it, they need to be transparent. They need to be honest. They need to admit their mistakes. And when they do that, then that means that you can go into solving big problems together. You can have healthy conflict and dialogue, and you can tackle big challenges with a bunch of A-type personalities where everyone gets their ideas on the table and they're not worried about silos and politics. And if you do that, then you can make more commitments. And when you make those commitments, you can be held accountable and you can hold others accountable. And when you have an environment of accountability, that's an environment that helps you focus on results and get more done than anyone else.
Love it. Absolutely. Listen, I want to transition.
That's from Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, by the way. Which is
a different book than The Advantage.
That's right.
Okay. I'm going to have to pick up on one of the two of those books in my next read. Or both of them. I want to transition to a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And that is what I call the lost art of selling with email. You don't sell with email per se, but you communicate and you engage with buyers through a medium, in this case, email.
You make an impression.
You make an impression, without a doubt. The thing about this, I've said this before on a number of times on my podcast. I've got a folder over the last year, 2 folders. One of them is called emails that suck and emails that don't suck. And in my emails that don't suck, I've got 5 in the last year. And emails that suck, I've got well over 100 sitting inside there. And I think there's a lost art that is associated with using email to influence a buyer or an executive to create a conversation. A, do you agree with me? And B, why are so many sales reps getting email or using email incorrectly?
I want to jump straight to B first. There's 2 things that you can do. You can take the long view and you can take the short view. And when it comes to interacting with other humans, it's rarely correct to take the short-term view. But yet, the short-term view is very enticing, right? Everyone wants to do less and get more. And that is why there are so many bad emails. Because people believe that they can do less and get more. And further, unfortunately, in the bad email game, you can send lots of bad emails and it doesn't immediately bite you. It actually rewards you early on. So let's say I launch a new product into the marketplace and I identify 3,000 target accounts that are perfect for this product. And I put them all in the email blast-o-matic and I send them out an email. Guess what? Some of them will reply and I will get some opportunities that I did not get before. And my manager is going to be happy with my numbers. I'm going to have high sender activities. I'm going to have reply activities. I'm going to have quality conversations, opportunities, and I'm going to have revenue. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to have a damn hard time of going from there. Because what I've done is I've burned up the population. I've put a bad impression on the 98%, the 99.9% that didn't respond there.
Right.
And so it's the short-term view. It gets short-term results. Those short-term results are appealing. And maybe I'll just go to a new company and do it again. That's an option, right? And so that's why companies need to be focused on their organizational communication. You can come to my house tonight, Mario, when we're eating dinner, with my family, and you can bring chocolate and you can offer it to my daughter. And you know what? She's going to say yes. She wants that chocolate instead of the broccoli that you have. But if my wife's making the decision, she's going to buy the broccoli. And so a lot of times these individual contributors and junior reps have been the ones controlling some of these decisions of what they do from a sales communications perspective. And they've bought the email blast-o-matic machine, and they've thrown all those leads and contacts in it, and they've turned that grinder and out it spit because it's the short-term candy for tonight. But what needs to happen is the moms and dads need to get involved. And they need to say, here's the impression we want to make on our customers. Here's the brand that we want them to feel when they interact with us. Here is the sales engagement experience that we want for them. And plan a strategy that allows the company to communicate with a better experience that drives the most revenue over the long term. So that's where we've gone wrong with sales emails.
Wouldn't you agree, though, and this is something I talk about a lot, would you agree with me when I say the challenge that I believe that is happening is that leaders, especially in the VP level and above, 40 and older, that's the 40 and older category generally, VP level and above, that they're managing to a quantitative productivity KPI, which is driving the behavior that you just described that sales reps shouldn't be doing.
Yes, because quantitative metrics are easy to manage by and measure.
I love your illustration, right? Someone offers your daughter chocolate. She says yes, but of course, mom's going to be there saying, no, you got to eat the broccoli, right?
Yeah, because we want her to live to be 100 years old.
Exactly right. And the same with the sales leader. You want your sales rep to be able to hit President's Club and all of them to be at P Club because, by the way, you'll be at P Club too, and it's good for them, good for you.
I want them to do it for 10 years until they decide to go be executive, and then I want them to do it for others for the next 60 years, right? I'm looking at the 40-year view, the 50-year view. That's what I want to create.
Which I totally agree with. So how do you then... What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you change the behavior of the sales leader in terms of how they're managing today? Which, by the way, I will tell you, 200 executive meetings a year, and I spend 2/3 of them talking about the productivity-based KPIs that they're managing people to. So this is a huge problem, I think, just in the sales industry because it's so hard to manage to the qualitative. Like, how can I inspect 7 reps, different types of communications or cadence programs? Is there a different way to do this? Should sales enablement be working on this? Should sales managers be reviewing this? I mean, what's the answer?
I have a post on LinkedIn from sometime last week where I basically lambast the bad emailers. And what I say is that you're measuring the wrong things. You're measuring sends. You're measuring replies. You're measuring these activity metrics. And what I said is you need to start measuring sentiment. You need to start measuring email deliverability. You need to start measuring opportunity size generated. You need to start measuring percentage of accounts you wanted to engage that engaged back with you, right? Those are the metrics that are quality, sincerity metrics. And those are the ones that are going to keep your business delivering over a long term. Because what's happening is, we've reached an era right now where most sales emailers are putting their company's deliverability in risk. They're ending up in spam traps. They're getting IP shut down, and it's very dangerous to organizations. And so they need to personalize their communications and do it in a way that is sincere and relevant to the buyer.
So I'm going to give you examples of the listeners who are listening in. I look at LinkedIn personalized invites.
Okay.
It's not an email, but it's very much on the same lines. It's the sentiments behind communication. It's personal touch, one-to-one, right?
Yeah.
So this gentleman, Brian Wish, that's his name, he sent me a personalized invite. And it says, "Hi, Mario. Love your show. Your message is superb, authentic, and I can really relate. I thought I would reach out and love to connect." That's what he wrote. Now, that's Brian. Loved it. Why? Because obviously I know that he's listening to the podcast, right? It's personal. Now, whether he has anything to gain from that or not in terms of his company selling something for me, I don't know, but I do know that it was personalized and it was a human-to-human engagement. And what am I going to do? I'm going to accept that.
Yep.
Now, I'm going to read to you one, which I'm not going to name the name for, obviously I don't want to land blast anybody. But this individual, she reached out to connect with me, and this is the message that she wrote. "Free media advice. Get more clients and exposure. Radio, branding, and LinkedIn marketing. Turn your connections into cash. Get lots of radio interviews or host your own successful radio show. We have a proven track record and hundreds of rave reviews. Worked with thousands of authors and entrepreneurs."
See ya.
So I have not accepted this when I'm looking at it. And I'm like, you didn't even say my freaking name.
Hey, you know that first one? I'm going to take the first one a step further.
Take it.
Hey, Mario, love the podcast. It's tremendous. I've also listened to 10 of the most famous podcasts in the world in other industries. And while listening to those, I've mined out 6 insights that make a podcast amazing. I'd love to jump on a call with you and share with you a few of these insights, because I think if you added it to yours, it'd be next level for you.
Okay, absolutely. Now, that's what we call the 1-step versus the 2-step approach, right? The 1-step is you're going to relate to me on a human level, and you're going to do exactly as you just described. The 2-step, which is also a methodology that we teach as well in social engagement, is
through another medium of communication, the next communication.
Or it's an after the fact. Like once we connect, now I'm going to reach back out to you and be like, man, I also listened to these other 10 podcasts, and these were phenomenal, and they corresponded to, so you're going to create that dialogue to be able to create conversation.
I personally like it together because my first communications I get from someone, I'm just measuring whether or not they can provide value, whether or not they're worth my time. Yep. And there's a difference between personalizing and providing relevancy. You can email me today and it can say, hey, I know you went to Georgia Tech. Hey, I know that you're a fan of custom branded swag. I don't know, whatever it is. But if you don't clue in on some way to serve me and help me do my job better, then I'm like, next, right? Because I don't have time for sellers who can't help me, who can't prove that they understand a pain that I'm going through or something, like that. So I think that's a big element of it as well for me.
Sure. I love your advice there. And it's one of those things where we talk about with sellers, what's the right methodology? You talked about personalize it and make it relevant, right? Yeah. So the personalization and relevancy. Love it. Absolutely agree. However, some buyers may not want to go directly to first base.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in, and here's the 2-step. Now, people oftentimes ask me, which one's the right one? Which should I do? And my answer is, try them both. See what works.
I would imagine that the more senior someone is, the more things on their plate, the more you need to capture the value earlier.
Fair point. That actually is a really good discussion point right there. Yeah. I would love to do some research around that. We should get together and do some research.
We can. We have 5 million data points, and in our platform today, a company can plan to make an email, send a phone, make a phone call, and send to LinkedIn and measure the results of all those activities and how they affect customer response, opportunity creation, sentiment, all those factors.
I love it, man. We're out of time. Everybody's listening in. This has been freaking phenomenal. But before I cut out here, man, do me a favor. If someone wants to connect up with you, is it through LinkedIn? Should they follow you on Twitter? Is there a way? I mean, what's the right way to be able to reach out to you?
Best way is Kyle@salesloft.com. I am also all over Twitter and LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And I pretty much respond to everyone as long as it's not a robot.
Yeah. So if you're using automation, you better darn well make it seem like you're not.
That'll be tough to do. The human brain is the best spam filter in the world.
I love it. So we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. And before we leave here, Kyle, do me a favor. Your all-time favorite movie, what is it?
I'm going to say Gladiator. I'm not a giant movie guy, but I just love the underdog story, the grit, the confidence, serving with purpose and passion. So I'm going to have to go Gladiator. But, I'm a big TV guy too. So I like to watch documentaries. I saw one recently, Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones is an incredible musician. He basically founded Michael Jackson. He was Frank Sinatra's music guy. And this documentary was just amazing. So I recommend that to everybody. I love stories of people that are exceptional and that have done things that other human beings haven't done. And I like learning what makes them who they are. And so that's my biggest thing is documentaries on exceptional people.
I haven't seen the Quincy Jones documentary yet, so now it's on my to-do. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Kyle Porter, CEO and founder of Salesloft. Dude, you've been such a pleasure to have. If you reach out to him on LinkedIn, make sure you send him a personalized invite and tell him
and relevant
show and make it relevant. So personalize it and make it relevant. That's the tip that I'm walking away with. Everybody who's listening right now, go ahead and stay tuned for this important message right here. Thanks so much for joining me on that episode of Selling with Social. I hope you found as much value in that episode as I did. Here's what I want you to do next. Please go to www.vengreso.com. That's Vengreso.com. 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 And make sure that you get access to our content. We've got the latest and greatest in digital sales, sales training, content marketing, and social selling strategies that are going to help you grow your sales pipeline. I look forward to having you on the next show of Selling with Social. Make sure you also go to Vengreso.com/podcast to be able to get access to the latest and greatest Selling with Social episodes, along with any of the other episodes that we've got from Social Business Engines with my friend and partner, Bernie Borges. Thanks again for joining on Selling with Social. This podcast was brought to you by SAP Sales Cloud. Here's what I want you to do right now. Learn more about SAP Sales Cloud by visiting callidus.com/Vengreso. That's CALLIDUS cloud.com/VENGRESO.